we recommend you take this moment to do what we're about to do, which is enjoy an Alp.
Last night in your speech in Macomb, that we're facing an unprecedented situation where there's a lot of abuses of nationwide injunctions, sort of seemingly designed to curtail your power, specifically when it comes to deporting these illegal, violent aliens that came in under the previous administration. Have you spoken to your team about ways to mitigate this and continue to deliver for the American people on
well,
that
there
aspect?
are ways to mitigate it, and there's some very strong ways. There's one way that's been used by 3 very highly respected presidents, but we hope we don't have to go that route. But there is one way that has been used very successfully by 3 presidents, all highly respected, and hopefully we don't have to go that way. But there are ways of mitigating that. I want to thank you all. He's a very smart guy. He's a very cunning person, but I've dealt with some people that I've dealt with some really bad people. But I will tell you, as far as this is concerned, you have to understand, he had no intention, in my opinion, of settling this war. I think he wanted the whole thing. When I got elected, we spoke, and I think we're going to have a deal. I can't guarantee that. You know, a deal is a deal. Lots of crazy things happen in deals, right? But I think we're going to have a deal. If I didn't get elected, I believe he would have just continued to go through Ukraine, and over a period of time, a lot of people would have been killed, would have lasted for a period of time. And the reason that Ukraine, and I have great respect for the Ukraine as fighters, they're great fighters, but without our equipment, that war would have been over, like people said, in a very short period of time. And if you remember, I gave the javelins, and the javelins are the things that knocked out those tanks right at the beginning of the war. They said that Obama at the time gave sheets and Trump gave javelins. Well, I was the one that did that, but I want to see it come to an end.
Will he have to make concessions, President Putin?
Yeah, he will. He's going to have to. And I believe that because we got elected, that war will come to an end. I know that, and I don't want this to happen, but I know that China is doing very poorly right now. I just saw some reports coming out, and I don't want that to happen to China. I like the president a lot, President Xi. I don't want it to happen. I was actually saddened to hear it, but they are getting absolutely hammered in China. And, they're sending boats, the biggest boats in the world, carrying cargo like nobody's ever seen before. These are the biggest boats in the world, biggest cargo ships in the world. And they're coming and they're turning around in the Pacific Ocean. They're doing a big U-turn and going back because they don't want the goods, because 145% tariff. But at a certain point, I hope we're going to make a deal with China. We're talking to China, but their factories are closing all over China because we're not taking their product. We don't want their product unless they're going to be fair with us. And that includes intellectual property and other things. There are a lot of things far beyond just buy, sell. So we'll see what happens, but,
As a recovering Wall Street person, I can tell you Wall Street people like instant gratification. President Trump's agenda is an agenda for the next 1, 2, 3 decades in the U.S. of bringing back manufacturing. And we have a very, what I call a barbell economy. On one side, we're the envy in the world of financial services, tech. On the other side, we're a great natural resource economy driven by energy. We're going to keep the energy dominance going. And what President Trump is doing is looking to bring back the precision manufacturing jobs that have left over the past decades. And I think we will close the uncertainty aperture more and more every day, every week on these tariffs. But we didn't get here overnight. We're not going to fix this overnight. But I do think uncertainty will go away.
Considering secondary sanctions on Russia.
Well, we know, again, that he's stated his willingness to do that, about the nature of, clearly we're not removing any sanctions that currently exist. The president wants in every action that we've taken as a nation to do it diplomatically. That he clearly because of the commitment to it, and yet he knows also that there's another part of the world, a whole globe that needs some attention. And the secretary has also made it very clear that while our style will change, the methodology of how we contribute to this will change, in that we will not be the mediators. That is what I mentioned on Tuesday, and the nature of how this would change is we certainly were still committed to it and will help and do what we can, but we are not going to fly around the world at the drop of a hat to mediate meetings. That it is now between the two parties, and now is the time that they need to present and develop concrete ideas about how this conflict is going to end.
A little bit of breaking news coming into us from Germany. The Reuters news agency is reporting that the country's domestic intelligence agency has classified the Alternative for Germany party as an extremist entity that threatens democracy, a move that enables it to better monitor the party, which came second, of course, in February's federal election. Now, they go on to say that certain factions of the AfD, such as its youth wing, have already been classified as extremist, but the party at large was also classified as a suspected extremist case in 2021. But now the Domestic Intelligence Agency in Germany is classifying the AfD as an extremist entity that threatens democracy.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Thanks for joining us today on this Friday. We were out yesterday. We had a rerun because the staff was overwhelmed with a lot of stuff going on, so we just decided to do a rerun yesterday. But don't worry, we've got Big Honey 6 with us today. Michael Yon will be on shortly, and we're going to run through what's going on in Panama because he's got a lot to talk about, especially about the United Nations and how they're working against the United States. And we broke a story, which we'll get into later on our New York paper, the Manhattan.Press, on that very issue. Before we get to the mission brief, big news yesterday. The NS National Security Council was shaken up, and Waltz left, and he's now at the UN. A lot of drama behind that, but guess whose star is rising? Marco Rubio. He's got like 4 hats now, running the State Department, USAID, and now temporary National Security Advisor. We'll see how that goes. There's been some really bad names floating around of picks. We hope that those don't get prosecuted or implemented, those names that we've heard. We won't go into it at this time, but we really hope we need a really good MAGA, pro-Trump, pro-America, pro-populist, anti-war national security advisor to get in there and really give President Trump some good advice, because he hasn't been getting it. Great show today, full show today. I told you about Michael Yon, Big Honey 6 will be here in a second. Pete Blaber is going to come on and talk about Ukraine at the top of the hour. Lots of really changes there. The U.S. backed away from a mediation role overnight. You saw Tammy Bruce, the State Department spokesman, talk about that. So that's huge, actually, and we're going to dig into the why and what behind that. And then later in the show, we've got Sheriff Mack, who wanted to come on and talk about the issues like Real ID and some other things facing Americans and the history behind it and whether or not that's really a good idea. So again, fantastic show. And by the way, we had a comment from someone this morning saying morning crew. I like that. You know, I think we're gonna call the chat group the crew, because I used to fly with a crew of 6 gunners, flight engineers, pararescue, PJs. And so we're going to call you guys the crew. So welcome to the crew. Thanks for joining us here. Thanks for our listening audience across all our different platforms at X, Gettr, Rumble, YouTube, and on CDM.Press. Of course, Follow us on cdm.press morning, noon, and night. Check us, put us in your daily scan. We're breaking stories early, overnight, all night long on what is happening around the world that you need to know. We're not going to bring bullshit. We're going to bring you what you need to know. We have to, husband our resources and make sure we bring you the things that you really need to know to be the smartest guy at work around the water cooler, at the dinner table at night with your family, or out for drinks with your friend who may be a normie and really not aware of what's happening in the world. So thank you for joining us. We'll be right back. I'm going to take a quick break, and then we'll get to Big Honey 6. Be right back.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, you use Alp? Yeah, I do, says my friend. So do I, says the cop. We all do. He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, drive safely, sir, and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine marriage.
So I have to take Michael Yon when I can get him, and I caught him yesterday, but we talked for a long time. This guy can talk, but he's got a lot to say. So this is a pre-recorded interview, but I think you'll really enjoy it. I may have to break it up a little bit and put some commercials in the middle of it, but we're going to bring on the interview with Michael Yon, and I really hope you enjoy this. We talk about some really important subjects. We've got Pete Blaber at the top of the hour, Sheriff Mack later in the show, and we've got to run through the mission brief. Actually, I'm going to do that now. Today is May 2nd, and I'm your host, L Todd Wood, and here's your mission brief. U.S. quits Ukraine mediation after a mineral deal was signed. That's huge. We're going to dig into why and what. China blinks in the tariff war, another huge development in pro-Trump land. We're very excited to see that. The markets are reacting nicely today. The UN is the root of all evil. Big Honey 6 is going to talk about that. No more funding for NPR. Not sure if you saw that, but late last night, Trump signed an executive order. No more funding for the communists over at NPR. And you know, we've been attacked by them in the past, so we'll talk about that and really the ramifications of that. And then German thugs go after AfD. Why? Alternative for Deutschland. Why are we funding tyrannical leaders, tyranny in Europe? I mean, this is the Fourth Reich. There's secret services going after people in Germany who want a populist government. France is banning social media, and you know, you saw what happened with the Yellow Jackets, shooting people, etc. The UK is putting old women in jail for praying silently outside an abortion clinic or for a meme on Facebook. So why are we supporting these people? Maybe they're not our allies. Maybe they were just ripping us off, taking our money and doing the wrong thing as far as freedom for humanity. So with that, I'm going to bring in Big Honey 6, Michael Yon, straight from Panama. We pre-taped yesterday, but very, very timely. Here we go. 20, 30 minutes max. Does that work for you?
I'll pace it. Okay.
Okay. I mean, if you want to go longer, we can, but it's up to you.
Okay. Just make sure my ringers are off. She had quite a tour. I think her now, and she's back in Texas now, or, you know, Laura, she would be in Texas for a moment and then on an airplane somewhere else. So, but she was such an incredible pleasure to take down to the Darien Gap and into the canal, because, you know, she has so much global knowledge already. So, you know, you can kind of start from the PhD level sort of. And so it was very good. So we spent maybe, I don't recall, 8 days with her. And so she had quite a tour. I think her knowledge, Laura Logan's knowledge of Panama, just exploded. And she clearly wants to come back, which I thought that she would, because this is a whole universe in a nutshell here. And a lot of Americans seem to have forgotten that. That's why the United Nations has one of their headquarters here. Let's say a headquarters facility.
Yeah. And that's why I wanted to have you on, because I saw some of your posts on the UN and on X, and I thought, this is interesting and needs to be talked about, because a lot of people aren't aware of the nefarious nature of the organization, or they may be, but they don't know the details. I'm just going to turn it over to you. What beef do you have with the UN?
Well, United Nations, as our grandparents were warning, many people's grandparents were warning, is not on our side, although we are the chief funders of the United Nations. Mm-hmm. And they have been part and parcel to the destruction of civilization while wearing the guise of here to save the world. Anybody who's here to save the world, should be looked at askance, because that ends nothing but trouble. And but at the end of the day, with the United Nations, when it comes to the invasions, for instance, of Europe, United States, Japan, Australia, and so many more. And again, I always mention Japan. Many people will say, no, that's not true of Japan. It is 100% true of Japan. They are suffering similar to the United States on the so-called migration. It's just not as obvious yet, but it is obvious to those who are paying attention, which I am. In fact, I'll be back in Japan soon. Keep in mind, I've written 3 books on Chinese information war that are only in Japanese, right? So I've been working on this for years. I wrote those in English, but they're only in Japanese because this was like 10 years ago. I was targeting Japanese audience to wake them up to these things. But the bottom line is the United Nations is the main engine of these invasions. They're working right now in Africa. Anthony Rubin was just over there. He's safely out now. He was with, sorry, this microphone's pointing the wrong way, isn't it? He was out there with, muckraker.com. He was just literally in Africa watching. I can say it now because he's safely out, but he was threatened just 3 or 4 days ago, right? It just happened. And so he made it back to Europe, and the IOM was there pumping Africans to Europe. And as they're doing in large numbers to Canada, just because it seems to have ended in the United States, and it has not. That's the
point I wanted you to drive home when you get there, but whenever you,
right.
Yeah. Right.
So the United Nations is still doing their thing. They're still firmly intact. Basically, a lot of Americans go, well, the border is secure now. First of all, it's not. Mm-hmm. It's just that the flows are very low now compared to before. The Darien Gap, they're almost at 0 right now. And by the way, let's rewind the tapes a little bit. Who was the one that put the Darien Gap on the map? It was us, right? It was us. I've spent more than a year in Panama since Biden was installed. At that time, very few people had even heard of the Darien Gap. Now, I and the Burning Edge team, Masako Ganaha, Ann Vandersteel, and others, we have taken about 60 people down into the Darien Gap. Congressmen, Epoch Times, long list. Brett Weinstein, Laura Loomer, Laura Logan, just long list, right? About 60. And to the canal and to the Darien Gap. This was back before people were paying attention to the Panama Canal and the Darien Gap, because I was saying pay attention to the Darien Gap and the Panama Canal. And I'm saying very clearly, and I have been since the beginning, pay very close attention to the United Nations. And now rewinding the tapes again, many people said the Darien Gap could not be closed. That's impossible. And I said, that's false. In fact, if I were at a table full of generals and one general said that the Darien Gap could not be closed, I would say you are dismissed. Mm-hmm. That's it. You're out, and somebody else will need to fill that seat, because the Darien Gap is child's play to close. I've heard so many people, they're supposedly experts on this, that, or the other, saying the Darien Gap could not be closed. Completely false. I've said this 1,000 times on interviews and in writing. The it is now closed, mostly closed, maybe half of 1% of what was coming through last year coming through now, just like a drip drop per day right now, say, 3 or 4 or 5
Is
people.
that because of the southern border being closed, or has there been additional steps taken down in Panama or on the way down through the gap?
Additional steps as well. But at the end of the day, we were right. I said so many times, it absolutely can be closed. It was closed before. It was closed during the COVID thing. So even the Panamanian government would say, we can't close the Darien Gap. And I'm like, well, you just closed it. You closed it during the COVID, right? It was Loctite closed, right? For more than a year. So it's obvious that it can be closed, and any captain could close the Darien Gap. You don't need a general. You don't need a colonel. A good captain, enabled. I mean, if you were to design an obstacle that would be helpful in closing the Darien Gap, it would be the Darien Gap, right? It would be that jungle. That jungle is intense. And so that would be a perfect. That's why we've kept the Darien Gap. It's called the Gap because there's no road for about 60 miles, right? So it's just out there in the jungle, and it's very difficult to cross. And that's part of that is the main reason the United States and Panama have kept it closed for so many years. However, a road is being built now to Colombia, which many people deny, and they are wrong. Anybody that denies this is wrong, period. You can discount them at that point. I'm the one that found it. I found it by looking in these old maps that I bought in antique stores around here, right? And I kept going down there to Darien. I spent months down there, and I kept looking for a potential road to Colombia and looking at old maps. And finally, I found it. And now they're building 2 bridges directly lined up with these old maps, right? I mean, they're going exactly the way that people envisioned the roads would go a long time ago. And so at the end of the day, once the Darien Gap is open, you can absolutely flood the United States with numbers that have never been seen before. Now, keep in mind, what we're doing now with closing the southern border, quote unquote, air quotes on that, is kayfabe, in my view, right? And I have a long track record of accuracy, so I'm going to stand on that as evidence, as is just my experience and my many years of being right on things like this, because I study 7 days a week and travel the world and go see these things, right? And I talk with the right people and read the right books. At the end of the day, what I see is an act. I see that the border is nominally closed, which it's not actually, but it's mostly closed. But the structures of the United Nations and HIAS, Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society, and all these other people, they're still in place. They're still funded. Their offices were still open in the Darien as of 48 hours ago. They are still open. It's the flows aren't going through, but the architecture's there, and they are manned, right? The offices of the United Nations down the road from me, fully open. I went by the IOM office about 4 days ago here in Panama City at Ciudad del Saber, City of Knowledge. They're open, right? There were people at their desk and that sort of thing. You can
so do you think this is just like a temporary pause to make everybody, feel good, and then it restarts at one point?
I would say it's like nakedly obvious, right? I mean, so basically we're slapping at the tentacles of a giant squid and saying, we're fighting the squid. You're just like knocking some suction cups off. The head of that giant squid is still there, and the other arms are waving around, still fully functional, and they are still being fed by us. The squid, we're like feeding the squid while slapping tentacles away, right? And saying, hey, we've stopped it. You haven't stopped anything. The squid is right here, and it's bigger than our whole ship, right? And so Trump hasn't stopped this stuff. Now, I get it. The Trump people go absolutely insane and go, yada, 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 whatever. I'll go with my track record. Years in the wars. Look at it. Throw a dart at old things that I wrote. Find them. They're all online. Just throw darts and find random stuff that I wrote and see how it turned out, right? Because I'm going to stick to the truth as I find it. Truth is difficult to find. But the thing about sticking to what you think is actually happening and being accurate on it is that eventually it turns out to be proven accurate, right? Yeah. It's very costly in the beginning. Truth is an investment. Lies are an expense. And lying to ourselves that everything is taken care of and you can pull the cover back over your head, that's false. The invasion is set to continue and much larger than it ever has. For instance, you saw the power outage that just happened in Spain and Portugal. Interestingly, I was standing beside the canal and I'm getting all these messages. I'm watching ships come in. I'm watching literally the Chinese bridge being built just a few hundred meters from me. I'm watching the Hutchison Port. I was on the Pacific side by Thatcher Ferry Bridge, for those who are familiar with Panama City. So I'm on the canal. I'm at that Chinese park. People know where I'm talking about if you're around here. It's right next to the bridge. It's right across the canal from the Hutchison Port, one of the Hutchison ports that BlackRock is trying to buy unsuccessfully. And I'm watching everything operate. And I'm watching China still working despite all the things that have been said. The bridge is still being built. Hutchison Port is still in the hands of the Chinese, and they were working, unloading the cargo right there. And then I'm getting these messages about Spain and Portugal's power outage, literally as a ship is going under the Thatcher Ferry Bridge from the Pacific into the canal right in front of me with windmill blades. So I look up that ship, and it's coming from China to Galveston, Texas, with windmill blades. Now, I don't know what caused the power outages in Portugal and Spain. I hear a lot of theories, and people instantly knew before the lights were even cool. They already knew what happened. They don't know what happened. Some people probably do, but most people are just throwing stuff up in the air. But the fact that I'm watching windmill blades, and on the ship tracker says they're coming from China to go to Galveston, Texas. You go to Texas and you see all these idiotic windmills everywhere. You go to Netherlands, windmills, Germany, windmills, everywhere you go. Like Europe is filled with idiotic windmills now, and which is taking over farmland, of course, which is hitting food resilience, as are cutting Nord Stream and Groningen gas fields and all these sorts of things.
And energy resilience.
Oh, yeah. And again, on predictions, I and Masako Ganaha successfully predicted Nord Stream interruption long in advance, many times. We were in Germany predicting. That's why we were in Germany, because we thought Nord Stream was going to be interdicted. And we were saying that. We weren't, it's not like, post facto, yeah, we knew it was going to. No, we were putting in, you either put it in writing and said it in interviews, or you didn't, right? And we did. And we were at BASF plant, which is a huge plant in Germany. It's where, anyway, long story short, we were at BASF because BASF would be a specific target if you took out Nord Stream. That's why we were there at BASF. And I asked, Masako was right there running the video audio. And I asked the guy giving us the tour of the BASF plant, what happens if Nord Stream gets interrupted? And he said, we are dead. Like BASF is dead, right? It's not dead, but it's very seriously damaged. How did we predict that in Groningen gas field and so many other things in advance? We were able to predict it because we study that 7 days a week, and we know basically what some of our enemies are doing. We know what their goals are. We understand a lot about their philosophy. We understand a lot about their capabilities. And if you look at that set of information versus what would you do on your target set, like your Carver matrix, I would take out Nord Stream and BASF and Groningen. And so we were predicting these things. We spend a lot of time in Netherlands because what else would you do? I would take Netherlands. I would take Netherlands and Rotterdam and Antwerp down there. And, Rotterdam's the biggest port in Europe. It's in Netherlands. And then Rotterdam and Antwerp is just south of that. I would take those two ports. I would crush Europe's economic legs, which is what's happening. You see that the idiotic people in charge going, let's go to war with Russia. I mean, they're just basically cutting their own veins and watching the blood leak out.
Well, it's all intentional. Those leaders aren't working for their own people. But regarding the renewables you're talking about with the wind blades coming through, I mean, I think that was probably the reason of Spain, is that they had some kind of either a surge or some kind of interruption of the power source from these renewables, and they just completely went down. I mean, it destroyed some of the grid. I mean, what do you think?
You know what? Remember the Texas power outage?
Yeah.
And a lot of people blame the windmills. Now, it's interesting, if you look online for, power outage in Texas, you'll see a long list of, no, the windmills were not responsible for the power.
That's how you tell, man.
Almost an admission of guilt when everybody's got almost the same title, you know, because we all know how this operates now, the Mockingbird. And it's just every major MSM mainstream media is going, no, the windmills had nothing to do with it in Texas. And they had everything to do with it in Texas.
So true. So true. And yeah, you're right. They were saying, oh, it wasn't anything to do with renewable energy. But, and you know, you see that what's going on in the Texas legislature where they're writing anti-meme laws and all of this. It's the same techniques that are happening everywhere. But back to Panama, I mean.
Wait, is Texas writing anti-meme laws now?
Yeah, did you see that? I mean, if you write a meme, you can be arrested and put in prison. According to
again, Governor Abbott, again, how many times did I publicly say when I'm in Texas and all over the world when I'm traveling, Governor Abbott is the Texas sector chief for the World Economic Forum, right?
Totally.
And again, my conservative friends in Texas were like, no, who do you want? Beto, yada, yada, yada. It's the always, who do you want? Harris? Who do you want? Biden? Who do you want? Obama? Is obviously not. Those are all part of the same organism, right? And so when you run Abbott in Texas against Beto, they don't care if Beto or Abbott gets in. Both are their little puppets, right? And so Abbott has done nothing but help the invasion while saying, look, I'm unfolding. If you look up online now, you'll see photos of Abbott out there with the National Guard. And I was down there too. I've been across the entire U.S. southern border from Boca Chica at SpaceX on the Gulf side all the way to San Diego. It took months. I've been across the entire border, and a lot of that on the Mexico side. So I understand a little bit about that border. And I spent many months down there. I've been to SpaceX probably 50 times. All the people with the phone data would see how much time I spent at SpaceX, right? And the SpaceX cameras would see how much time I've spent there. A lot. I was there because aliens were coming from Mexico onto SpaceX property while aliens are preparing to go to Mars from SpaceX, right? And you'll notice that after I brought Burning Edge there with Ann Vandersteel and our team, that was when Elon Musk finally started going to the border, right? And that was our intent of going to SpaceX, to do Chinese water torture until he had to pay attention. And then suddenly you see him at the border. We didn't even ask to talk with anybody at SpaceX. We didn't ask to talk with Elon Musk, never reached out, never messaged, never called, never texted, never anything, never tried to back channel. Just nope, here we are. We got the camera. We got this $500,000 thermal on the border. You know, we can see everything, and we're just live streaming it. And then we moved to the next target. I came back down here to Panama and continued to focus on the Darien Gap and the Panama Canal. And now you see this is in the news, which will probably soon be forgotten. Keep in mind, I always say this. This is the Panama Canal to the United States. It's that important. But Americans don't seem to get how important it really is. It is non-negotiable. This is massively important. And China is colonizing Panama. Every time I say that, everybody loses their mind. But what about? But what about? But what about? But what about? They'll say, but what about America? America's bad too. Oh, yeah, we do a lot of bad stuff. No question about. Now, let's get back to the point that China is colonizing Panama. Let's get to that point. Not that we're bad too. And all, they are colonizing Panama. Now, Panamanians who live here will say, no, they're not doing that. You don't know what you're talking about. Blah, 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 blah. China is colonizing Panama, full stop. Right. And they are doing it. And I know how they do it. I've written 3 books on Chinese information war. I spent almost 20 years in Asia watching this stuff. I've been, all over the place over there, including China, quite a lot. Right. I know how they do it. They're doing it. And they're doing it in a big way. I'm not talking about the Chinese who came here 170 years ago. That's a different set. There's different sedimentary layers. The one that's coming now, this latest layer, that is colonization on a large scale, and it's doing it in service of the Chinese Communist Party. We're not talking about the ones who came. They always try to conflate these things. Well, the Chinese have been here since the railroad. Yeah, they have, for sure. In fact, I spent yesterday with an author she wrote these books. I was with her in her apartment yesterday. Her family's been here her name is Berta Chen, very nice lady, and she's of Chinese descent. Grandfather came in 1880 something. And so, but she doesn't speak Mandarin either. So she's like the second layer of Chinese who came. The first layer was more like 1840s and 50s. She's like the second layer. And then there's she said about 7 layers actually. And the latest one are the ones who are straight from, and they don't actually all get along, right? It's not like they're all Chinese and hey, we're all Chinese together. That's not how it works. I mean, the latest Chinese who are here, they mostly don't speak Spanish or English. They speak Mandarin, and they're coming in sufficient numbers that they form the Anthro-Insula, the human islands, right? Anthro-Insula is a word that means human islands. It's when you come in with enough people and you intermarry. For instance, this group, if you marry out of the Chinese, Anthro-Insula, then you're out. You know what I mean? These are people that are, as she put it yesterday, on the clock. Straight up noon would be those who just came from China. They speak Mandarin, not Cantonese, not Fujianese, not Mandarin. They speak Mandarin, and they adhere to the old, ways of China, or say the new old ways, to put it more accurately. And they all stick together, right? But they don't even bother to learn Spanish or English other than maybe for business purposes. So, and they intermarry. So that forms that's actual colonization, right? As opposed to coming and for the purpose of actually eventually like kudzu taking over the structures, right?
No, I think that's what, we just had this election in Canada, and I think you were talking about Beto and Abbott. I think that's the same thing going on there. I think Trump got it though, maybe that this conservative Plivier, whatever his name was, Trump was attacking the 51st state, which caused, they say, to have Carney win. But I think, Trump said, I'd rather deal with a liberal who I know who he is than this conservative who's not really conservative. I mean, what do you think of that? I know you're not a big Trump fan, but your colonization point, I think, has already happened in Canada also.
Canada's thick. We went to Canada last year. Masako and I, we went from here and then over to Florida, looked at that for a spell. And actually, Masako's Japanese, can't even get into America. Visa problems, unbelievable. I mean, you can have huge invaders come in from all over the world and can't ever speak any English and who are coming to stay. Masako can't even get a visa. You can't make up this stuff. So she had to jump back to Japan for a while. I went to Florida, checked that out. And then we met over in Bahamas and looked at the situation there. China's got a huge port there. They used the Bahamas as another invasion route to Florida. And then we flew up to Canada. So we flew to Toronto. We stayed there for quite a while, maybe 10 days or so. I don't recall. And we looked around, we checked out the situation with the border and many other things. And then we flew up to Yellowknife, which is 200 miles from the Arctic Circle. And that, believe it or not, Yellowknife is, so for those who are unfamiliar with Yellowknife, if you look that up on the border, it's way up there. And it's filled with like Afghans, Pakistanis, Africans from Nigeria and Somalia and everything else. And how did they end up in Yellowknife, United Nations? Because they are dividing and conquering. They're replacing with people from many different cultures and languages. They'll be able to control them because none of them will get along, right? They can't. They wouldn't be able to get along if they were all Nigerians, because they're going to break down into Igbo versus, their Hausa or whatever. They're going to break down into their own tribes, right? That's how this actually goes in the real world. In the real world, is very different than a lot of people might imagine. In the real world, a lot of it's tribal, right? And it's at the tribal level. It's not national level. It's tribal level. In many, like Iraq or Afghanistan, or it's ethnic and tribal. And it gets a lot of people break this down into it's only Muslims versus Christians or whatever map you want to put down. But if you look in Iraq, say the Al-Jabari tribe, the biggest tribe, right? The Al-Jabari tribe, many are Sunni and many are Shia, right? And so I've asked many people from the Al-Jabari tribe, what's more important to you, your tribe or Sunni versus Shia? And every single one said tribe first.
Of course.
Tribe first. So we're not going to fight them just because they're Shia or Sunni, because they're our tribe. So that first. And so, but otherwise, if it's separate, there is a lot of Sunni Shia fighting that happens. But when you look deeper, a lot of it's at the tribal level. It's quite fascinating. So that's what we have here. We have people, invading and going up to places like Somalia, or let's say Minneapolis, now Somalia, right? And they're going to follow tribal law. They're going to follow. They have a sufficient number of people that they have an Anthro Insula. They have a human island. They will go by their law, and it won't necessarily be Sharia. It might be their tribal law, which may be conflated with Sharia. Like when you talk with Pashtun people in Afghanistan, the Pashtun people go by Pakhtunwali, right, which is their tribal law, right? It's their tribal way. They go by different tribes have different ways and different sub-tribes, and then Sharia is part of it, but they have other. You'll never understand the way they operate unless you are an anthropologist and devote your life to learning their language. And the bottom line is we're mixing a lot of fish into the same aquarium, and there is no way they're going to get along. And that is what it's all about. Some fish don't mix well in the same aquarium. We're going to end up with balkanization, weakened, and then it's easy. If you put us into famine at this point, at any point, then you will have destroyed the United States that our forefathers and foremothers worked so hard to build.
So how do we, what do you see happening with the UN? Is there any effort within the Trump administration to confront it?
Are you seeing any effort to do it? I mean, I'm not. So I'm not. And so there you go. I mean, the most that I get, with the actual Trump cult is that, keep in mind, they'll say, oh, you got TDS. It's like, yeah, there's somebody here's got TDS. All right. Trump derangement syndrome has a spectrum, right? There's ones who he can do no wrong. He's playing 7D chess, but he still falls for the jab. This is 2025. They'll just hold up Fauci. Oh, Fauci. Okay, this is 2025. The Fauci doll doesn't work anymore. It's gone, right? Fauci fooled him. This is 2025, right? It's like, he still sticks Fauci. Right? I mean, that is a cult. That's a straight up cult, right? And you can never do wrong by studying cults and cult formations. It's an investment. And at the end of the day, look at the evidence. They'll say, the TDS he can do no wrong will say, well, he threatened the United Nations. Threatened? Are you joking? He's feeding the giant squid. We're still funding them. And then they'll say, well, we don't have, and I say, what about the mass deportations we were promised, right? We should be sending ships up the Mississippi River to Memphis and other places, in San Francisco Harbor and Miami and Tampa and Jacksonville and New York. We should be sending ships in all the ports and loading those ships up and deporting 500,000, 1 million per month. We should be doing it right now.
Yeah.
Not happening, period. And so they'll say, give him time. That's the next thing. Give him time. What are you talking about? He was president for 4 years, and then he had 4 years to plan about it. And now he's been in office more than 100. Time's up. Daylight's burning. We're going to have midterms very soon, right?
Yes.
And they'll say, we don't have the resources. That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. So we've got the resources to go fight Iran. We've got the resources to do all these other things. And we've got look on Ship Tracker. You see how many ships are out there? We have the resources, 100%. The will is not there from Trump because Trump is not in charge. He is a condom, just like Fauci was, just like Biden was, just like Obama was and Bush. I mean, they're all condoms for greater powers. When you look at a lot of people blame everything on Obama. That's just proof that they don't know anything. Obama is just another poison fruit off of a tree in an orchard, right? I mean, the fact is, when Americans continue to accept the lesser of two evils, they fall into it's red pill versus blue pill. You want the red pill or the blue pill, right? And wait a minute, who is this guy giving me the pills, right? When you go to the so-called vaccine, which is not a vaccine and it's not experimental, they'll say experimental vaccine. Okay, not experimental, and not where's the evidence of this? That stuff was definitely not a vaccine and not experimental. But so that when you say I wouldn't take any jab again, they will immediately say, like, I will never take a vaccine again. Immediately, many people will say, what about measles? And if you just thought, what about measles when I said that, that's because that's been implanted into your mind to say, what about measles? That's called information war. If you say, what about measles? That was an implanted response, right? And so what about measles? So the measles jab is made by the same hand who made this one. You know what I mean? This is not
All you
complicated.
gotta do is watch the old Brady Bunch clip where the kid comes up with the measles, you know?
I watched it. Yeah, that was epic. And that was epic. But, you know, red pill or blue pill, it's like, why would I take either pill from a guy? I don't even know your last name. First time I met you. Here's a glass of water. Red pill, blue pill. Okay, I'll take the red pill, and they're the same guy, right? So, you know, you can't. And remember, when this happened, when they had all the different jabs out, you know, the Pfizer versus Moderna versus whatever, AstraZeneca, yada, yada. And you had people going, well, I'm not going to take that one because that one's, mRNA stuff or whatever, yada, yada, yada. And so that was a trick to get you to go, well, I'm smarter. I'm not going to take that one. So I'll take this one.
Yeah.
But then they fooled you because that was a forced ambush, right? You're like, okay, I'm afraid of that one. So I'll take this one from the same hand. It was a clear weapon. People are dying constantly now. They're falling out of the tree practically like iguanas on a cold day in Florida, right? I mean, I think most people watching
there's complete crickets on that. I mean, you don't hear that in anywhere, even on Conservative Inc. You don't hear.
You're not allowed to bring it up because the compass needle clearly points right at what you can't point at, Trump, right? Clearly points right at his ecosystem, not just him, because remember, he's just a condom, right? It clearly points right at his ecosystem because he's part of the same ecosystem that Biden was a part of, right? Now there's internal fights on who's going to get how much gold and silver and oil and routes like the Panama Canal. But at the end of the day, let's face it, he's not acting on our behalf. That's clear as day. But people are afraid. They're like, well, if not that, who? Remember, most of the people when I spent about a year in India, I was studying cults. It was amazing, right? And one of the things I noticed was a lot of people that are actually looking for a cult to be in. And they would say it. They're like, I came to India looking for a guru. I heard that so many times. I was in Nepal for a year and I was in India for almost a year. So about 2 years between those two countries. Heard it over. And there's some people watching this who will have been to India looking for a guru. You're going to find a guru. Trust me. They're waiting on you. Right. And so, and when I would talk with them, a lot of them, it appeared in my non-scientific poll, actually were looking for a father. They were looking for somebody to guide them. They were looking for somebody to be strong and to think for them and to reassure them, if you do these things, you'll be fine, right? And you see, when Trump was reelected, many people said, well, I've got him voted back in, so that's all I got to do. I'm done. Yeah. And there were literally people saying, Daddy's home. Literally, you remember that? Slept through for a while. Daddy's back. Daddy's in charge. I'm like, this is.
Meanwhile, they stole all the down ballot races. So, and control still all the way down to the local jurisdictions. I mean, that was obvious too.
Daddy's home. Well, Daddy is giving poison Kool-Aid, right? Daddy poisoned his own children. I mean, that's clear. I mean, meaning the MAGA movement. You got to keep in mind, this is industrial scale brainwashing. We were born into it. So nobody is guilty of being stupid for falling into it. We were born basically into a tiger cage, right? Yeah. And so we're little children crawling around on the floor in a very sophisticated world that took centuries at minimum to develop these skills. The skill, the array that's arrayed against us is intense. And it's so much a part of everything. It's in the books that you read, literally out of the Matrix. They're, saying it's all around you. You can't seem to escape it because it is in the museums. I've been to dozens of museums. Oh, more than that. I've been into so many museums in dozens of countries because I look at museum warfare, right? Just in the last 4 years, 5 years, I've been in probably museums in about 30 countries, right? Ready?
Ready. So we're out in the field in South Dakota shooting pheasants, and we're coming out here to a milo field you can see behind us, and I was throwing in an out. Someone else was using a tobacco product. And then somebody, and I'm not going to name names, pulled that out in public at a hunt. And so that's obviously yesterday. What we have here, ALP, is tomorrow, and we're going to make that official by symbolically ending the long reign of this product. Willie Robertson happened to be hunting with us. We don't have a mechanical fur, but we do have former U.S. Senator Rick Santorum of Pennsylvania. With an arm. Willie's got a 12 gauge. I've got my trusty 20, and we're going to see what we can do to usher out the Zen interval. Yes! So, I should say, alppouch.com, for sale now, alppouch.com, usher in tomorrow a brand new world of nicotine pouches, the American Lip Pillow, on sale now. Warning! This product contains nicotine. Nicotine is an addictive.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed Big Honey 6, Michael Yon. He can talk for hours, so I had to cut him off there. But we'll have him back down the road, and he's always bringing up issues that I agree with. So that's why I always go to Michael for. But the UN thing is huge, and I didn't know he was going to get into the whole Trump thing, but the UN thing is huge, and we need to stay on it and force the administration to do something about it. We're on podcast. If you're in the car or on the way to work or can't get the show, check out the podcast. We're on all podcast providers. Put CDM.press in your daily scan, morning, noon, and night. We bring you the real news. And I'm here with my trusty AFP gear. So Armed Forces Press, armedforces.press. If you go to armedforces.press, top left corner, there is the AFP store. Look good in the gym. Get gains in style with our AFP merch. Really cool gear with cool designs that will look good, and the chicks love it. So check it out. I want to talk about a few things before we bring Pete Blaber in, and one of them is China. And let me just bring this up here. We're going to talk about the whole Ukraine thing with Pete, so I'm going to skip over that right now. But China is now evaluating its possibilities of trade talks with the U.S. For weeks, they've been saying, we're not going to negotiate. It's Trump's thing. He needs to take the tariffs off. Well, guess what they're doing? They're now lining up for talks with Trump. And also, they're lining up, they're pulling their tariffs down silently on certain products. I just read that on another site, economic site, that they have been quietly reducing their tariffs because they're hurting. I mean, their factories are shut down. Their people are out of work. This is putting great pressure on Xi Jinping. And the CCP could literally lose power if this continues. So I expect a China deal, and the markets are going to take off. So beware of that. The UN thing is huge. I mentioned that. Let's talk about that. So the United Nations, we have a story up on our Manhattan paper, which is the Manhattan.press. Let me just bring that up so you know where it is. The Manhattan.press is our Manhattan paper, our New York paper. We talk about the book list, the Manhattan bestsellers list on the top there. You can check that out and buy your books from us. Check out the only list that I know of that's completely unbiased. I'll get to that in a second, but the panic at the United Nations, we have sources in Manhattan that are telling us that the panic is real. The funding has been cut drastically. The U.S. cut all its foreign aid pretty much, but it also cut the money laundering strings from USAID. The UN was essentially acting as a global money laundering house laundering stolen money from the U.S. and giving it to our enemies. So that has been happening on a massive scale, and it's a huge story. We're going to stay on it because I want to really start digging into the UN and what it's actually doing. While I've got you on the Manhattan, let's look at the bestsellers list, top right corner on the Manhattan.press, the Manhattan bestsellers list, the only list that I know of books weekly that are sold that are just the best sellers in all the different categories. And if you go down below each book, you can check out and buy the book. And if you have any book that you want to buy, go to cdm.press to our CDM bookstore top menu, and you can buy all of them or anything there. Your book for your studies, a book for school, a book for your business, or a book just to read on vacation at the beach, because that's coming up. Buy it from us. Don't buy it from Amazon. The next item on the list today to discuss is NPR, which has been completely defunded by President Trump via an executive order. They targeted us a while back, our Eastern European side, saying we were Russian, of course. But now Trump has X'd out all the funding. This is massive. Why was the U.S., why were we funding a Marxist, globalist, communist propaganda arm inside the U.S. government? And there's other arms. Voice of America used to be a great voice out to the world, but that has been reduced as well, and hopefully that will be defunded also, or at least changed to its original mission and get the people out of there who are really doing bad things to our nation. So that is huge, and we're going to stay on that story because it's just massive and a really good thing for the United States. And last, before we go to the break and then bring Pete Blaber on, Germany has gone full tyranny and has decided that Alternative for Deutschland, the populist party, which is now the biggest party in Germany, they're on the parliamentary system, so they have a lot of different parties that have to form coalitions. But the German intelligence services has classified AfD as extremist, which means they are surveilling them, they can repress them, they can do all kind of very nasty things, just like the old Stasi, the East German secret police. The Germans are very good at this, remember? So we're fighting tyranny in Europe, and this is a theme we're going to really push going forward. France is gone. The UK is gone. Germany is gone. All of this, the EU is just a big project. Trump is right, to build a tyrannical organism to take power and to confront the U.S. All the while, we funded them and funded their via bad trade policy and funded their defense. And what we get in return is them taking our money and suppressing their own citizens, which is not a Western value. So what is the point of NATO? What is the point of defending Europe if that's what's going on? So I think this is why Trump is, I think you'll see Trump getting closer to Russia because of this reason, because there's some commonality there that the U.S. and Russia have now. And the Ukraine war, you could look at that and say that was meant to split Russia away from the U.S. So I do trust Trump's leadership on this, and I hope we make progress in this area and support freedom-loving people instead of these tyrannical regimes. We're going to take a quick break, and then Pete Blaber will be with us. Be right back.
Watching my friends gain more and more weight, and then eventually I got to tell you, this is a little dark, but bad diet literally killed my whole crew.
Wow.
Diabetes, a stroke, I mean, all kinds of stuff. It's like, you had a stroke? You're not even 50 years old. You guys got to quit eating this stuff. Your body knows what's what. You're not conscious of this. But that's why people will go to the refrigerator and they'll grab this and that and the other and put together this outrageously elaborate combination of foods. Your body's trying to reach balance. Unbeknownst to us, our bodies are always trying to reach homeostasis. You can't eat all of this stuff and expect to live a long time. And one thing led to another, and I went, forget this. We're going to make our own product. So we partnered with one of the world's top 3 biochemists where nutrition-specific study is concerned. I said, all I want is the best nutritional and immune support product in the world. So we mixed it in yogurt. It's a powder. I got a bag of it here. I keep one on the console all the time, just so I can show people.
Yeah.
And it's a powder. Now, this is not candy. This is hardcore nutrition, and sugar is an enemy. And most people do not know that the reason these bellies are showing up on people all over the place, your body makes fat to store the toxins it can't get rid of. So it just puts them over here. But I can tell you this, you take this for 30 days and then lay off of it for 2 or 3 days, and you'll go, good grief, give me some more. Skin, nails, hair growing back. Cut yourself and it heals in half the time.
I'm David Cross, and you may know me from my election integrity work, but I also own U.S. Asset Management, an investment advisory practice. I've been an advisor for nearly 30 years, and one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, do I have enough money relative to other people my age? And while that's an interesting question, it's also the wrong question. The right question is do you have enough money to sustain your lifestyle for the rest of your life? This is a question you should know the answer to. This is what we do. Check us out at us-am.com and look for our big proud American Eagle logo.
We're slogging over Africa. Foot, slogging over Africa. Boot, moving up and down again. There's no discharge in the war. 7, 6, 11.
Welcome back to the SCIF. We're getting a lot of orders of Nucleo Boost. Here it is. I take it every day, shake or yogurt, smoothie or whatever, and it's a little bitter, so you have to put it in something else, but it's the real deal. It's not candy. It is nutrition at the cellular level, put into your cells by the BioAllo on Nucleo Boost. And, you know, the stamina I get from it is amazing and really just ups your defenses for your whole body. Check out the subscription. It's cheaper than the just buying it one-off, and get healthy. So that's what we're big on here at CDM. So I'm going to bring on Pete Blaber now, and we're going to talk Ukraine, everything Ukraine. Hello, my friend. How you doing?
Good. How you doing, Todd?
Oh, man, busy day. But, wow, the whole chessboard overnight has changed on Ukraine. You know, the U.S., Tammy Bruce at the State Department came out and said we're not going to mediate anymore. I think that was due to the mineral deal being signed. I think the U.S. got what it wanted, and now it's going to let the chips fall and focus on China. What say you?
I agree. I'm in part hopeful, but it seems like strategically what Trump's trying to do is provide a rational reason, show everyone why we need to pull out of Ukraine, pull all Americans out. And I think, you know, the negotiations have already shown that Ukraine's certainly not flexible toward the demands Russia's been making for the last 2 years. And given that, you know, there's no pathway to peace. And if that's the case, we should do the right thing, which is pull all Americans out and stop contributing to the war.
So the mineral deal, I think, in Trump's view, and I think even, I don't know who said it was Rubio or somebody, that this actually gives leverage against Russia because we're there to harvest the minerals now, basically. And for, you know, I guess the question is there going to be any future military aid? I mean, I think I saw a $50 million package last night get signed. I don't know what that entailed. It said military support supplies or something. So who knows? But what do you think? Are we going to continue funding this war, or is Trump going to let it go? Because if he's got a stake in the deal on the ground for the minerals, he's probably not going to let it go. What do you think?
Well, he almost has to. He's already said it repeatedly, this is not my war. It's Joe Biden's war, which is very true. We shouldn't even call it the Ukraine war. We should call it Joe Biden's war.
Yeah.
But he's already said that. He's already committed to that. So for him to go back on that, you know, not only would it show he could not bring peace to Ukraine, which, you know, initially he said one day. I think that was not, you know, you can't take Trump literally, especially when he was on the campaign trail about peace. He meant as soon as I get them both to the table, I can do it in a day. Well, you know, that hasn't happened. We're 100 days in, and you know, without being able to accomplish that, he's just it's going to make him look like this is his war, and he will lose all his leverage with Russia. The only reason Russia's listening to the United States is because of Donald Trump. Putin is very savvy about world affairs, and he was savvy about what happened in the 2020 election. And of course, he watched Trump, the repeated assassination attempts against Trump. Didn't take anyone with inside knowledge to understand those were being organized. They were not random. So he admires him, sees him. As you just said in your segment before this, there's so many things, natural things, that make sense for Russia and the United States to become close allies here, given especially what you just said about the rest of the European continent. And what's happening in Germany alone is just disgusting.
Completely agree. I'm going to play this video of Kellogg, General Kellogg, retired, his comments, which are seemingly complete opposite of Trump, and then we can talk about it. So here we go.
Russia's not winning this war. Russia has not made any major advances in the last year and a half. They haven't taken the city of Kyiv, the capital. They haven't pushed to the west of the Dnieper River, which is a major obstacle. They haven't taken Odessa. They've lost hundreds of thousands of soldiers, and they haven't really moved anything. It moves by meters, not by miles. And the Ukrainians are fighting on their own soil. They're fighting hard.
So he's got a complete opposite take, don't you think?
Yeah, it's very concerning that, first, just it's factually wrong, but it's very concerning because he's the lead negotiator now. And, what credibility does anyone think he has right now with Russia after what he just said? And, you can pull it apart very simply as far as terrain in the first 2 months of 2025, the Russians gained 151 square miles of terrain. You can look at that on commercial satellites, and that's about seven Manhattan Islands. Kursk alone was 390 square miles, so they've taken back Kursk. 390 square miles. He said they're not taking by miles; they're taking, by kilometers. So it's very concerning that he's saying that. And, Todd, I was concerned about him from the beginning. I heard, next time we talk, I'll send you the clips because I found them last night after I looked at what he said right there. When he first took over, and you could tell this was not a Ukraine expert. This was not someone who understood the history of what happened over there, which goes back hundreds of years, but certainly from 2013 forward. And so, there's a part of me that says there's some intellectual laziness here. When you get tasked to be the negotiator for something like this, the first thing you should do is totally immerse yourself in the facts. And it does not sound like he has done that. What he just regurgitated there were talking points, and again, they're inaccurate. He went on. There's an article that was published in the Voice of Ukraine, I think it's called, and in it, he lists. Yeah, there you go. He lists all the reasons why the war. You can go ahead and scroll down a little bit because there's some unbelievable things he says in there, and they're counterproductive because no one needs to delude Zelensky anymore. He's already self-deluded, and then he has the whole EU chirping in his ear, telling him, "You're winning, you can do this." And he has the American Democratic Party doing the same thing, which is not in the best interest of the Ukrainian people or the country of Ukraine itself. So again, very, very concerning. You can look at one of those comments on there is one of the talking points that, we heard Cavoli say.
I was going to say That was exactly like Cavoli, and maybe people can't see this thing, but it said there's some parts of the Ukrainians I don't like, but no final position will satisfy everyone. He's talking about the deal. That's normal. We're in a pretty good spot, very comfortable where we stand. Russia should recognize the shifting circumstances. What circumstances? There's no, I mean, it's shifting in Ukraine's against Ukraine, if anything. And he says they are very, very ready to strengthen their support for Ukraine, talking about the UK and France. I mean, they just said they can't even deploy more than 25,000 troops to the area. So that's just a pittance. That can't do anything. It'd just be a tripwire than anything. Right?
Yep. Yeah, and he in there also, if they went down a little further, he says, we've developed an elaborate 22-step plan with Ukraine. And I just, shook my head. An elaborate 22-step plan? Well, then we're good. If you've already put together a 22-step plan. The other talking point he said that's the same as all these guys is, first in that article, he says, bottom line up front, he says Russia cannot win. Not Russia's not winning. Right. Russia cannot win. And then he lists the reasons, and one of them is this talking point. Ukrainians are going to fight they want to fight to the last Ukrainian. They're fighting for their homeland. And again, the only way you believe that is if you don't, is back to that intellectual laziness. If you don't understand that the battlefield is a battlefield that is the home of ethnic Russians who have already voted for autonomy and independence. And they did that because they were forced to by what was really a military genocide led in large part by the neo-Nazis. So, to say that these Ukrainians, they'll never give up, they're fighting, that's not genuine. That's like if Hawaii voted for independence and we had American military over there fighting in Hawaii and someone saying, and we were losing, getting wholesale destroyed, and someone saying the Americans will never give up because Hawaii is their homeland. And so he just does not understand the ethnic makeup or, again, the history of what's happened over there. I mean, especially in those oblasts.
Yeah, exactly. The four in Donbass. I mean, maybe that would be true if they were marching on, Marchinkova or West Ukraine, where it's Polish and a whole different population, but it's not. I mean, what people don't understand is Ukraine's a very ethnic, multifaceted country. There are a lot of different groups, Hungarians, Polish, that whole Polish empire to the west, and then you have in the east, you have the Russian influence. But the war's not in the west; the war's in the east. Yeah, there's missile strikes in Kiev and other places, Lviv, or ammunition dumps and that kind of thing. But they're not invading that area, and I don't think they have the force structure to even do that. I don't think Putin wants that. I think he wants what he wants, which is those four territories. And there's minerals there. It's resource based, of course, and that's what Trump is trying to get a piece of that, obviously. Pete, can you stay for one more segment? I need to take a break. Can we come right back? All right, be right back.
The bird flu is circulating. We're getting more and more press, more fear mongering, more warnings about this. First, let's start with that. What say you on?
Well, what I say is it specifically is not circulating. It's in animals. There's one human, maybe two transmissions, no human-to-human transmission. And stand by, everybody. If there is some sort of sudden human-to-human transmission, you should immediately be suspicious that gain of function was involved with that. Just the fact that they're taking an animal virus and going nuts on it in the press and talking about it all the time, that to me leads me to believe that they have concerns that somebody is doing something with that virus, because this would not happen naturally, in my opinion.
Our world is changing rapidly. Many crucial systems we depend upon are collapsing. And the most important system that is failing is the food supply.
Mr. President, this Council is more than aware of the multiple challenges and threats the world is facing today. But the threat of famine, people starving slowly to death, must be a red line.
These food prices are going to keep going up and up, and they're going to keep feeding excuse after excuse, narrative after narrative.
Yeah,
you're going to have to get off that treadmill and start getting more autonomous with your own food growing.
You want to make sure that you can eat, because frankly, food is the biggest issue as we are going through these transitions.
But amidst the chaos, there is a path to resilience. Marjorie Wildcraft is the female leader of the survival and preparedness movement. Marjorie has taught millions of people how to grow an abundance of food in a grid-down situation, even if you have no experience, are older, or out of shape.
I've spent decades finding the fastest, easiest, and funnest ways for the average person to be able to grow a lot of food. I've created a step-by-step process that's so simple that even kids to elders have been using it in order to grow a lot of their own food. And you can too, even if you have no experience, you're older, or you're out of shape.
Growing your own food is like printing your own money. Get started today.
Hey, Pete, you sent me an article yesterday on Marcus Luttrell, and let's talk about that. I dug into a little bit. Let me just bring it up. Comes clean about the lone survivor, movie and book and all of that. What did you take away from this?
Well, I'm glad he finally came forward. Not sure when that book came out, like 2010 or something like that. It's been out a long time. And there's a number of other books out there that have already been proved to be fictitious, that hundreds of thousands of people have read. And so, to most military veterans, the main issue is when you put out a book that's not true and is just fabricated truth, not just some little detail switch, but the whole thing is just fabricated. You deny your fellow warriors the freedom to learn from what happened. And that, and it's not just warriors, it's civilians too. Our freedom of choice to learn, which is, an evolutionary right. Without it, we can't survive. So, from the beginning, his book and the movie, I read his book when it came out, and I put it down about 100 times and was just like, this is just so wrong, because you can tell he made it up. And back to that freedom of choice to learn, there's at least 3 fundamental things in that book, that mistakes that were made that should have been called out, that everyone who read that book or watched the movie or talked about what happened should have talked about and internalized. And the first was, he and his team were a small boat team, I think they were called, and out of Hawaii. And so this mission they were on was strategic reconnaissance. It was a sniper reconnaissance mission that I would put at the PhD level, because it was up in the mountains, super rough terrain, no friendlies anywhere nearby, no QRF that could reach out and support you if needed. Really difficult mission. And that should have been called out, and someone should have been held accountable. Why did you send this this team, which is completely unsuited for that mission on that mission.
Yeah, because there was really bad consequences to that mission in the end, because we lost a Chinook and a bunch, a whole helicopter full of operators, highly trained operators.
30 men. And so, and then the second thing is, so they did the infiltration. It's a mountain infiltration on the CH-47. The team came in, they fast roped in. The 47 accidentally cut the ropes. So the fast ropes, which are, about that thick, and each rope weighs, hundreds of pounds. I don't know what length they had, but hundreds of pounds, those dropped to the ground. So if you had a bunch of sniper reconnaissance guys here and you were giving them a test and you said, what should you do now? There's only one answer. It's mission abort right there, because you can't leave your ropes behind you. Everyone could hear a helicopter. Yeah, so that's number one. The second thing that happened was they were compromised by a goat herder. A goat herder walked up on them, and in the book, Luttrell says, I got in an argument with the team leader because me and the rest of the guys wanted to kill him, which is, again, if you had that sniper reconnaissance panel, just the fact that goat herder compromised them. Every goat herder in Afghanistan actually has a cell phone on them. The mission's compromised right there. It's not a question, do you kill the goat herder? It's mission abort right there. And that's a massive lesson. In fact, in most special operation interviews, it's a test question, and they substitute different scenarios. What would you do if a little girl compromised your team? Guys who say I'd kill the little girl or tie her up and leave her, they flunk. But in that book, what he encourages is, hey, we should have shot that goat herder. They're on a recon mission. They're not on a killer capture or a neutralized an atomic bomb.
You think, what happened I don't know the full story, but in the movie, they let the guy go and he goes and warns, and then the army comes against them.
Yeah.
That would have happened either way, right?
Well, exactly. That's why it's abort criteria once you're compromised. But these guys had no clue of that. They're not that. They've never been trained at strategic reconnaissance. So it was like a caveman being asked to fix a rocket ship. And then the third part was everything that happened after that was a result of not aborting the mission. His entire team was killed. In an interview he did right when he got back before the book was written, he told Anderson Cooper, look, I lost it. I threw my weapon down and ran for it. And that's actually on the military chain of command knew that. That's on a Predator tape. It shows him running away. And, forget about the, cowardice and all that. There's also a lesson there. There is a time, the most important decision any of us make, survival decision, is should I stay or should I go? And for military guys, again, strategic reconnaissance guys talk about this all the time. When in doubt, bolt. There is, it's a legitimate course of action. And again, for lesson learned for people looking at it, maybe the whole team should have done what he did and just ran for it, because they were far outnumbered. They were in terrain. They had no chance. They knew nothing about. These guys live up there. They know every rock, how to get up and down the slope the most efficient way. So, these books that are completely fabricated in order to make money do a real injustice to not just fellow warriors, but all the civilians who read the book, and all the future warriors who read these books. And that's probably the biggest population of all.
So, me being on the other side of that as a helicopter pilot, JSOC, flying you guys around, there should have been somebody on alert to come get these, like a QRF, like you said. I mean, so they should have, in your mind, gotten to higher ground, which they tried to do in the movie, but I don't know.
Yeah,
You're
the
saying they
movie-
should have evacuated to higher ground and got comms going and got some kind of, evacuation exfil.
Right. In the movie, you can't fault the movie. Movies, to make a movie, you have to have a little bit of artistic license. So
of course,
I go by the book, what he wrote in the book, which sold millions of copies. And you're absolutely right. The key points in there are brought out, and to not call them out and not learn from them is doing a disjustice.
well, from a command perspective, if you've got, if we infilled a team, then, there would be, it was just written in the operation, how would we get them out? If that failed, who was going to go in? I mean, how would it happen? What assets and whether it's, Navy on a carrier or whatever. I mean, there was always something there to get them out.
There was a QRF that's what crashed. But
right.
again, a major error by this team when the ropes were left. They, as far as I know, they did not call back. I know they didn't call back and say, "Hey, you dropped the ropes." So that means two things: not only mission abort criteria, but it means you cannot go back and use that HLZ. That HLZ is compromised. Well, guess what? That's where the MH-47 QRF was trying to come in and land at again. And that's where they got shot down by an RPG and 30.
Because they were just sitting there waiting, right? I mean,
exactly. They found the ropes. They were probably trying to haul them out. It was it's a gold mine for some Afghan farmers.
Sure.
But they were there, all the insurgents, and the 47 came into the same spot. So it's all these lessons that go unlearned, and they go unlearned because someone is fabricating the truth in the name of profit. And one of the good things I think he said in there was he talked about the fact that it was a Navy admiral who pushed this whole thing, and he was the guy in charge. I think his name was McGuire. He was the guy in charge, and of course, that's the step one of any leader who has a catastrophe or a disaster while he's in command. Cover it up, and the way you cover it up is cloak it with glory, cloak it with awards, and that's pretty disgusting too.
Well, they were. I mean, I think the command was watching all this on live, real time when it was going down. I remember hearing about it when it happened, just because that was my business, But so you're saying essentially they should have contacted the infill ride and said, "Come back and get us because we're compromised."
Right off the bat, as soon as the ropes were down, they should have. And the team leader had a cell phone. He didn't pull that out until they were apparently. It's hard to say when he pulled it out because now that I'm thinking about it, that was from the book and all made up. So at some point he pulled it out and called and said, we're under attack. We're a couple of guys are dead. Come get us. And that's when they launched. But he should have, again, just what you're saying, any strategic reconnaissance team, talks about these contingencies. Okay, what happens if we drop the ropes? Mission abort. What happens if we're compromised? Mission abort. And, mission abort, then set up the SATCOM radio and call back to the rear, which they didn't need his cell phone. They could have used their radio both of those times, but they didn't. And so by not aborting the mission when the ropes were cut and not calling back to the rear to inform them that that HLZ was totally compromised. Not only did the team get killed, but all 30 of those fine warriors on the helicopter died also.
When they came back in to get them. Pete, thank you very much. I appreciate it, and let me know when you want to come back, because I always love hearing from your insight and everything that's in your history. So thank you. We'll take a break. Stay with us on the SCIF.
Well, in the case of hydroxychloroquine and ivermectin, these are two medications that have been FDA approved for use in humans for decades. They are very, very inexpensive. Interestingly, available over the counter in almost every other country other than the US and Canada. You can just walk into a pharmacy and buy them like we buy Tylenol in much of the world because they're that safe. And we've known for decades that ivermectin has very strong antiviral properties. It has anti-inflammatory properties, and both ivermectin and hydroxychloroquine are what we call zinc ionophores. They help to move zinc from the bloodstream into the cell, which is where it needs to be in order to fight off a virus. So lots of application for these, and we have every reason to believe that those drugs also will likely have some efficacy against H5N1 or a number of other respiratory viruses that we may meet down the road.
If you haven't noticed, gold has reached a new high, all-time highs actually, and keeps going up every day. Why is that? It's because precious metals are a long-time historical store of value. And if you own a portfolio and you have assets in the fiat currencies, i.e. stocks, bonds, cash, or whatever, you're vulnerable to hyperinflation, which is coming as our debt explodes another trillion every 90 days. It's really scary. So how do you protect yourself? Go to Advisor Metals. If you look on any of our cdm.press sites, about halfway down, there's an ad for Advisor Metals. Click on it, fill out the form for your contact info, and Ira Bishotsky will contact you and talk to you. It's an easy conversation. There's no sales pitch. He's completely verified by us. He has a regulatory background we've checked into. We've checked with his bankers. We've checked with his IRA custodians for metals, and we can highly recommend Advisor Metals and IRA. So go to Advisor Metals. If you call them directly, tell them we sent you at CDM, and he'll definitely take care of you. But protect your portfolio because you really need to. It's coming. Thank you. Welcome back to the SCIF. If you're traveling a lot, check out the emergency medical kit, the travel kit at the Wellness Company. Go to twc.health/CDM, promo code CDM. Just play around there on the website. Check out all the different emergency kits. This is the contagion kit for respiratory issues. You know, if the next pandemic comes, you're going to want to have one of these. And check out their supplements. This is the Ultimate Spike Detox. If you've got somebody that's been vaccinated and you want to try to purify their blood from the spike proteins, this has been shown, the nattokinase and other things in this have been shown to be effective in some studies. So anyway, go on and play around with the website and check out the different memberships and everything there, because they're re-engineering healthcare and they're a big sponsor of ours and of free media. So please support them. And I sat down with Sheriff Mack yesterday. Again, we take people when we can get them. He wanted to talk about Real ID and some other things and really pressure the Trump administration to do the right thing on this stuff. So we're going to bring in this, and hope you enjoy this interview. We're honored to have with us today Sheriff Richard Mack from Arizona. He's got a lot of experience in the fight against the deep state, or whatever you want to call it. And we wanted him to come on and really talk about deportations and the sheriff's role in that. Welcome, Sheriff. Thanks for coming on.
Well, thanks so much for having me. I appreciate it. And your video is freezing.
Is it really?
Right now, you're a statue.
Probably it's okay, because
we can start over if you want.
Go from there.
Okay.
So so I said welcome to the show, and go from there.
Okay, well, again, Todd, thanks so much for having me. There's so much going on in our country right now. I'm grateful that Trump is in there, but we have so much work to do yet. But if you'd have told me in the first 100 days he would have the border secured as much as it is right now, I would have said that's a huge accomplishment, and that would be enough for the first 100 days. So even though we have a couple of things that we think he needs to address right away, like defunding Planned Parenthood, which is the most corrupt, illegal funneling of money It probably breaks about 10 different laws, but it is so illegal to take taxpayer dollars and funnel it $700 million a year to a private club, a private organization that provides no government service whatsoever. And then Planned Parenthood funnels that money back to the politicians who funneled it to them for their campaign coffers. It couldn't be more corrupt.
There's a lot of circular money laundering going on with all of these NGOs and those types of organizations. Yeah. On the deportations, I agree with you. The border is huge and a massive accomplishment. But the deportations have not been as quick, I think, as some people want. And a lot of that is due to the judiciary coup against presidential power and lack of funding. Do you see any other barriers that have been put up to stop the deportations that Trump wants to do?
Well, obviously, the Trump derangement syndrome is going strong against him. We knew this because of history. We knew they would do everything to try to stand in his way and shop activist judges who will do it. Yeah. The law should require, and it already has, but they need to get more specific, that judges, when they make rulings, must quote the provision in the Constitution that they are defending. Instead of Democrat political dogma, they have got to stand for the principles of the Constitution that they all swore an oath to do. And we need to go after more judges. I'm really glad that this Dugan judge lady got arrested, but we need to arrest and investigate many more judges across the country.
Did you see it in your jurisdiction during your time in office? Judges working against the efforts that you were trying to do on the illegal alien front?
Well, yes, but not just illegal aliens. But I sued the federal government. I sued the Clinton administration, won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court, obviously. And by the way, just so all your listeners know, this is a highlighted version of that case. A lady just emailed me this morning who just read the case. And she said, this is the most miraculous case ever. Folks, this is the most powerful 10th Amendment state sovereignty case in the history of America. You all need to get this. It's all available at our website at cspoa.org and discover this amazing freedom SCOTUS ruling that happened back in 1997. And so, yes, we need to move on this, but we need to move our country back. And that's what this helps do. The solution for America is if we go back. The solution is in Independence Hall. It's in our Constitution. It's in the foundation of America. And that's what we've got to get back to. And I hope that we can have our sheriffs join in the effort, because you're talking about speeding up deportation. The sheriffs getting involved in this will be essential to that. Because they know their counties better than anybody in the country. They have posses, they have their people, they have their deputies, even their search and rescue squad, people who know what's going on in the community that can report where these terrorists and cartel cells have located and then get them out of here. And having the sheriffs work together with Tom Homan is essential to making it go bigger, better, and faster.
Have you been happy? I mean, there's been, I think it would be fair to say, mixed results with some of the sheriffs, like in Pinellas and in Florida, that they're really not stopping a lot of the election fraud. In fact, they probably are involved in it, delivering ballots themselves, which is illegal. I mean, on a percentage basis, what amount of the sheriffs across the country do you think are really on Trump's team?
Well, if you look at the map of the country that voted red, it's 80%. You would think that those sheriffs would be backing the people who voted for Trump. Yeah. But there's too many timid sheriffs. That's the problem. Oh, I don't want to get involved in any controversy. It might cost me my election and I might lose my pension. We need more sheriffs with just a little bit of courage, with some intestinal fortitude, to stand for what's right and to just do one simple thing that they already promised: keep their oath of office, to uphold and the oath of office is an allegiance to the Constitution, to uphold and defend the Constitution. That's what they swore to do. That's all we need them to do. It's really sad that the percentage is right about maybe 30%, a third of the sheriffs doing this. and they're just laying back and hoping not to be part of a controversy instead of doing their job.
Interesting. Let's switch subjects a little bit. Real ID. Your people said this was a big issue for you. Tell us what we need to know about that, because it's being instituted across the country as we speak.
Well, the Real ID actually came to us from President George W., and it was a brainchild of his ridiculous and absurd and unconstitutional Patriot Act, as if there was anything about it that was patriotic. That's a lie. And it passed in 2005, and ever since then, presidents pretty much have ignored it. Obama didn't want to really go with it. Then Biden was pushing it. Trump didn't want it in his first term, and now for some reason they're pushing it. It is a scam. It is a way to keep track of the American people. It does retina and DNA analysis. It keeps all of it on a file. And I've done a lot of traveling, and I fly a lot. For the last 8 months, all the TSA people have warned everybody, and it's been nice. They're nice about it. They say, oh, make sure on May 7th next year, you've got to get your Real ID Act. So I went and got one. And I went to the Arizona DMV, and I was still doing it as just kind of research, because you don't have to use it. You can use your passport instead. And I kept my Arizona license that I had before. And so I asked them there. I asked everybody there that I could, what is the difference? Why do we need to do this? And do you know that the state does not have to go along with this?
No, I didn't know that.
Well, it's in my decision. Let me read this to you right out of the order of the court, because all of this case was based on the overreach of the federal government. And Scalia, who wrote this, quoted the New York case of 1992, and it said, quote, we have held, however, that state legislatures are not subject to federal direction. Federal government is not our boss. And then this is the order of the court. This is Scalia shaking his finger at the federal government. Quote, the federal government, now this is again the only time in history where sheriffs sued the federal government and won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court against the Clinton administration and against the overreach of the federal government. The federal government, he said, may neither issue directives requiring the states to address particular problems, nor command the state's officers or those of their political subdivisions, the DMV, the cities, the counties, the school boards, or those of their political subdivisions to administer or enforce a federal regulatory program. I'm trying to get this in front of President Trump. This decision has not been changed. It has not been rescinded. And the only problem is most people in Washington, D.C. don't even know about this case. President Trump and others in his cabinet need to be aware of this. Kristi Noem needs to be aware of this. It's called state sovereignty, and the federal government is not our boss, and they cannot tell us what to do.
One of the ways I think they get around that is with funding, because and that was part of the issue with education. They took over a lot of the education funding in the local jurisdictions. And then, yes, they can't enforce rules, but if you don't follow them, then they pull your funding. So
I've got a good one for the states to try this. Okay. Stop sending money to Washington, D.C., and they won't have money to hold over your head.
Well, there you go.
Where do you think they get it? Besides printing it, they get it from us. And look, I think Trump would be reasonable about this. And I think if somebody showed him Ron Paul's ad about the dangers of the Real ID, this is not, it's not going to make us safer. It's not going to do anything. It's not going to keep illegal aliens from getting them. They could go around this very easily. They already have driver's licenses and social security numbers. All they'd have to go in there is show another letter to their address that shows they get insurance or a bill of some kind. You show that, you show your current license, and you get the new one. So it's not going to help what they're thinking. The Real ID will stop or prevent.
What else, Sheriff? Is there anything else the American people should be aware of?
Yes, we have a great constitutional sheriff who's been arrested by the Biden FBI back about a year ago. He was convicted this past November. And this injustice, this huge injustice, has got to stop. We've been trying to get it to Trump. Anybody that can help us, please help Sheriff Scott Jenkins from Virginia. We've got to get him a pardon. It was all federal. Of course, the FBI usurps and steals authority, that they're somehow over sheriffs or over local corruption. And there's no agency more corrupt than the FBI except the IRS. We need President Trump's administration to take this bull by the horn and obviously abolish the IRS, get rid of the income tax, and go back to constitutional spending. And we'll have plenty for everybody if we just stop the ridiculous criminal spending that we do in this country.
Well, that's certainly true. With them being able to just print money with the push of a button, that makes it very easy. So,
but we need help for Sheriff Scott Jenkins. Everybody, call your Republican chair in your state, call your senators and congressmen, and say, please get this to Trump. We've got to get this good man out from underneath this. Tina Peters got the same thing, except hers were state charges. This will be a lot easier for a pardon because it's all federal, and Trump could do it with a wave of his pen.
Is there anywhere people can go to like find information on this? Any websites?
Well, I don't know if I have it on my website yet, but please email me and I'll get it to you. sheriffmac@hotmail.com.
Sheriff, thank you for your time. Really appreciate you taking your time to come on today. Thank you.
Anytime. Appreciate it.
Your government doesn't care about you. That's why you need a medical emergency kit. It contains life-saving medications like ivermectin, Z-Pak, and antibiotics. Stock them before they block them.
True life Alp story. I got a call from a friend of mine yesterday, honestly, true story, who said his girlfriend had just broken up with him over Alp. He wouldn't stop. And I thought to myself, that's kind of sad. And he said, no, it's not sad. Imagine if I'd married her. Now I know I was saved. Then the next day, this same friend is driving at twice the speed limit through a major American city, pulled over by a cop in a speed trap. Cop takes his license registration, goes back to the patrol car, runs him, comes back, looks in the window, and sees a tin of Alp on the dashboard. Pauses, stunned, says to my friend, you use Alp? Yeah, I do, says my friend. So do I, says the cop. We all do. He looks at my friend thoughtfully and goes, drive safely, sir, and hands back his license and registration. No ticket. So in 2 days, he's saved from a tragic marriage to a girl who doesn't like Alp and a speeding ticket. All true. It's more than a nicotine marriage.
Welcome back to the SCIF. Wow, what a week. A lot of changes going on globally and down at the U.S. level. We're going to try to continue to crystallize and cultivate and curate the stories that you need to know to be the smartest out there and to really make an impact in your life. And that's our mission here at CDM.press. Put us in your daily scan, please. CDM.press, CDM.press. Tell your friends. Check us early in the morning. We get stuff out before most because we have reporters around the world that are feeding us info, and it's getting processed and put up on the sites as to what's happening. So please support us that way. That's the best way you can help us, is just check the site cdm.press 3 times a day, and that's just really great for us traffic wise. And please spread the links, tell your friends. The Georgia show will be Sunday at 2, and we're revamping some of the shows. The Georgia show is going to stay Sunday at 2 and Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern both. But the Colorado show is going to be off this week. They're going to be moving toward to a weeknight format. But we'll probably tape a Eurobytes. I'll be streaming Eurobytes here on CDM later today. But the Georgia show is impactful. I mean, there's a lot going on in Georgia that's not good. And we have the best political show out there, the most impactful show. Bill Quinn and I really dig down into what's happening in Georgia, and I'm sure, and I know there's stuff going on that we'll be talking about. I mean, there's a huge fight at the grassroots level between this corrupt regime that Kemp has put installed at Davos's direction, in our opinion, at the globalist direction, and a fight against the grassroots. And it's a fight, it's an existential fight for freedom and for the common man in the great state of Georgia. So please join us for that, and just check the sites out. There's going to be a lot happening over the weekend. All these wars, we're trying to stay on top of it. I guarantee you we'll have the best information out there. So please support us that way. Just check us out and tell your friends. We appreciate your joining us today. We'll see you Monday on the SCIF, 10 to noon, Monday through Friday. And I'm sure we'll have some great guests Monday as always. So we're proud of the guests we have. Anyway, thank you for your support, and we'll see you Monday.